Breaking news, everyone. Lincoln Riley leaving Oklahoma, going to USC. So the next question that I raise, Matt, is why? So here are my thoughts. Okay. Lincoln Riley's in a situation at Oklahoma that seems rather comfortable. He's achieved a high status there. They're winning 11 and 12 games every year, competing for college football playoff appearances. He's going to a less stable situation, a more precarious situation at USC in regards to how many people are going to show up at the games, what kind of resources, what kind of backing, what kind of support is going to be there, who's going to pay attention to us in the Pac-12 if the conference doesn't play a better brand of football and gain more national prestige. Just a much more unstable, uncertain situation at USC. I got to think that maybe the relationship had soured at Oklahoma, possibly. Maybe the thought of going to the SEC and being a fourth, fifth, or sixth best team in the SEC possibly didn't sit well with Lincoln Riley. Maybe the opportunity to go to the Pac-12 and be a dominant program and really cement a legacy by lifting USC back to national prominence. And maybe it was all about money.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. When it was announced that Oklahoma would go to the SEC, you'd think, okay, Lincoln Riley, an elite coach. We're going to see him against Nick Saban. We're going to see him against Kirby Smart. Oh, yes. And, so usually the big dogs, the best of the best, they want to challenge themselves against the best. So from that standpoint, first off, why would Lincoln Riley leave the SEC? But second, why would he go to LSU? When he's already going to go to the SEC. So just the idea of him leaving Oklahoma for another college program just didn't line up. Not when you're that good, not when you're that accomplished at such a young age. And you have strong national recruiting, as I mentioned earlier, that Oklahoma was certainly recruiting extremely well out west. So, the SEC angle really is the puzzling part, because I would think that, you want to challenge yourself against Nick Saban, Kirby Smart. But what are we left to think? I mean, obviously, in the Pac-12, Oregon has been the best program the past few years, no question about it. But we're seeing Oregon's not dominating. Like Mario Cristobal, he can definitely recruit, but his game day coaching, that part of the puzzle, it's not really lining up that fully. Oregon might beat Utah in the Pac-12 championship game, but unless it's like a convincing blowout, and I highly doubt that. The Ducks are really banged up for that game. Let's just say it's a really close game, kind of an ugly game. It will be clear that while Oregon will be the number one team in the Pac-12, it's not by any significant margin. And so this is a conference that, if USC was to recapture the Pete Carroll standard, you could also, for our older fans in the crowd, refer to it as the John McKay, John Robinson standard. If USC returns to that standard, there's no question, none, that USC is number one. So Lincoln Riley obviously gives USC that stature, that level of standing. And I guess Lincoln Riley thought that was pretty attractive, instead of knocking heads with Nick Saban and Kirby Smart and, being the second, maybe the third best team in the SEC most years. He obviously wants that clear path to being the best in his part of the country, which, as you said, he did have at Oklahoma. 6 straight Big 12 championships, 4 straight as a head coach before finally falling short this year. That's the best answer I have. It still doesn't make sense, but that's the best answer I have under the circumstances.
We've got about 300 on the line. We've got Matt Zemek here from Trojans Wire. Please check out his work on USC football, which has become much more interesting. Matt, we joked the entire season that for being such a blue blood and such a name brand, that USC had the most boring football season of all, in their games just being meaningless and uninteresting the entire season. And now it's all flipped on its head, because this is an intriguing story, one of the biggest in college football this season, in a season of NIL, SEC expansion, and more, and a playoff format proposed at 12 teams. So just another blockbuster here with Lincoln Riley going to USC. And in amongst what you just stated, it goes back to a conversation that we had a number of times, where it's a little bit different at USC in regards to what is considered a home run hire. Because we as college football nerds can evaluate home run hires elsewhere and say, okay, that's a great hire because this guy's an up and coming coach through the group of 5, and he's really proven and he's a hot shot. But that's not going to move the radar in LA. It's not going to move the needle where Lincoln Riley, okay, top 5 program, boom. He's won Big 12 championships, been to playoffs. We know that name. That moves the needle.
No question about it. I mean, he is a top 5 coach in college football. Like, you don't have to question that. Certainly, you know, with like Ryan Day, look at Ryan Day, you know, losing to Jim Harbaugh, and you can certainly make the case. Now, I'm not saying this is like my verdict or my take, but you could make a reasonable case that Ryan Day was propped up by Justin Fields. Now, that's debatable, but we're going to see in 2022 what Ryan Day is made of. So, you know, what Lincoln Riley's been at this for several years, you know, again, 4 straight Big 12 titles before finally failing to win the title this year. So that's a body of work, which puts him, you know, right under Saban and Dabo in the top 5 in college football. There's zero question about it. And the other thing is that Lincoln Riley coaches offense brilliantly. And that is something that USC had definitely lacked. You know, Lane Kiffin showed some promise, and you know, his 2011 season, which was ineligible for the postseason that year, USC would have been in the first Pac-12 championship game that year if it was eligible. So Lane Kiffin kind of got a raw deal there. But then 2012, you know, USC entered the season in the preseason top 5. You know, that was supposed to be the year Lane Kiffin put it all together. He failed to do that. So really, USC's gone a decade without an elite offensive coach, without an elite offensive profile. I mean, Sam Darnold, you know, just due to his individual brilliance, saved Clay Helton in 2016 and 2017. But, you know, with Lane Kiffin not really being quite ready to be a head coach 8 years ago, we're seeing now he's finally matured into being an elite head coach. USC has not had an elite, fully in command offensive coach over the past decade of misery and unfulfilled expectations. So Lincoln Riley checks that box. I mean, he fully fills that to a point where you can't question it at all. I mean, he's going to have all of the precision, the intelligence, the scheming, the play design that USC has been lacking for a long time. So Lincoln Riley's not just an elite coach. He brings the sex appeal. He brings the sizzle to a city, Los Angeles, which definitely craves that. So it just meets everything. He's also, you know, obviously a young, telegenic, you know, popular coach. Like there's just nothing that this hire fails to achieve. So Mike Bone, the athletic director, whom, you know, this was going to be a career-defining hire. It was going to be a defining hire in terms of, you know, resetting the Pac-12 and giving the Pac-12 a chance to make the playoff, a chance to be a really big hitter on a national scale, you know, with media rights negotiations coming up for the conference at the end of 2023. Boy, all eyes were on Mike Bone, and Mike Bone hit a 500-foot moonshot out of the stadium.